Good morning Internet, this is Michael from Trike Bike and today we're doing a maintenance video. So this tricycle is in for repair. It's got some bearing problems in the back, but let me just explain a few things to you firstly. This is a pedal tricycle. It's about 5 or 6 years old. The customer has decided to electrify it. This is something I don't recommend because electric trikes and pedal trikes are made to two different standards based on speed and suspension and so on. But this customer has chosen to electrify it, which is okay. But what they've done during the life of the tricycle is replaced a few punctures in the rear end, and they've over tightened the nuts on the left hand side wheel. And what that does if you over tighten it is it pulls the wheels together and it will damage the bearings. So in this particular bike we're going to go through and replace the bearings. So we're going to go through step by step, completely refresh the back end. I'll have a look over it and see what else it needs, but let's go for a little test ride to start with. Okay, before we start to remove the rear axle, we need to loosen this bolt here with an M5 Allen key, this bolt here with an M5 Allen key. We also need to remove the brake caliper. Everything's loose in the back, so I'd say the customer's had it off and been having a play. Okay, so we're just going to do a double check. We've got the caliper off, we've got the disc loose and able to slide backwards and forwards. The first thing I do is slide it over and remove the little key from the keyway. And we have the same on the other side. So I'm just going to put the bike into top gear. That way we can move the chain right over. And now we can slide this backwards and forwards to remove the key. So we've got the key out of that keyway. Now we can tap the axle and actually remove everything from the frame. Okay, we're going to start by removing the wheels. Oh, way too tight. That's what's caused the issues. And they have not used Loctite during the assembly, which is a big no-no. Yeah, I can see a lot of wear on this tricycle. It's been doing a lot of work. Now this side, which is meant to be the tight side, is actually loose. And there's no washer. So I'd say they've had the back end of this apart a few times and the bearings have failed because they've done everything up too tight. Something's locking on there. I don't know what, so I've got a big shaft. I'm going to put it through and we'll tap it out. Just going to use this metal shaft here and tap the axle out. There you go, whatever it was hung up on is just released. Now we should be able to start sliding it out again. I didn't want that to happen, but we dropped our disc and our gear set. Just going to continue moving it out. Now I'm inspecting this axle, and I can see there's major damage here. It's been caused by the bearings failing over time. This effectively needs to be replaced. But first off, we're going to remove the bearings. One's already fallen out. So I can see this bearing has already fallen out. It came out with the axle shaft. This inside bearing is cooked. That one has had it. This one has had it. So the reason these bearings have failed is because when they've put the rear axle on, they've over-tightened this side. That's pulled everything together, and it basically starts by destroying the two outer bearings, and then it will move on to the middle bearings, and that's what's caused this bearing and axle to fail. The bearings lock up, and then the axle needs to rotate around, and that's what's worn out these large gouges on the axle. You can see there the bearing has not been turning, the shaft has been turning, and it's destroyed the shaft. We're going to remove the bearings. I'm just going to use my piece of rod, and you can just slide it and tap it. You can see how easy it comes out. I'm just going to step in front of the camera. I'll go around to the other side, slide the rod all the way through. Just give it a tap and the bearing comes out quite easily. Also with that bearing came out a lot of metal as well, and that's what's been worn off the actual shaft. That bearing has broken up into pieces. It's been destroyed completely. You can see here the bearing cage has collapsed. The race is completely destroyed, and that's what's caused the axle to get damaged. So the first step in repair for this is to go in and clean where all the bearings sits. So use a rag. I use a bit of metho on it. So I've moistened this rag, and I'll go in and make sure everything's clean. So there's 4 bearings go in the back of this. We'll make sure they're clean. I'll use some compressed air to blow it out. You'll see here we've still got the remains of the outer bearing race stuck inside the frame. So I'm going to get my little rod out again. This may not work. I'm just giving it a tap. The problem I've got is that this has been chamfered, so it won't really catch on the bearing race quite well enough, but if I keep just tapping it away, you can see it's now starting to come out. What I might do is swap this over, and I'll use the old axle that we removed because it's got sharp edges. You can see it's coming out now. It's been removed, completely collapsed, it's worn through. So I'll go back and clean it out. Quite a bit of damage in there where it's been rolling around. I'll just get a sander and we'll give that a bit of a clean up. Here I have 4 new bearings. I'm just going to fit the inner race first. So I'll put in this one. You can see that's just pushed in, so that's obviously been damaged by the movement. So I'm going to put in some locking compound. This side's a lot firmer. So let's just start and gently just tap them in. That's a very sloppy fit on both of these. I'm just going to use some Loctite 609, which is a seating compound. Okay, we've got both of the inners in. Now, we want to make sure that they're aligned nicely, because if you get the bearing in and it's on an angle, it'll actually cause quite a bit of resistance. So I'm just going to go through our first bearing, through our second. I've got the shaft through, so I'm just going to very gently tap the shaft, and that puts that bearing into position. We'll go over the other side and repeat. Now the good thing about doing it this way is that they're all perfectly aligned on the centre line of the axle shaft. If I just tap that in haphazardly, it could be on a slight angle, exaggerated here, but it will cause the shaft to bind. So again, we'll just find our spot. We'll go through. We've gone right through to the other side. I'm just going to tap this gently. You can see we're not putting any force on the bearing to cause any damage. We're just tapping it in. Now we can remove our shaft. I'm going to put a little bit of grease on each side of the bearing races, and then we'll start our reassembly. Our axle shaft in, it always goes in from the right hand side. You'll see that little bit of grease has made it so much easier. I'll now fit the gear cluster, the gear drive, so that'll go in. Just have a look at our disc. It's still serviceable, probably at about half life. So I'll put that in. The collar on this side faces a collar on the other. So I'll put that in. And now we can just slide our axle shaft all the way in until it's firmly in this position. We can separate our gear cluster and our disc, and we can look on the side here for the keyway that's been cut so we can line everything up. So I'll give the key a little bit of a wipe. I'll put the key in the keyway. I'm going to do the right hand side first, so I'll put it in. Oh, got to rotate it. Okay, rotate the collar around so the key can fit in there. So slide it over. Now on this is an old one, so we like to have a gap between the outer part of the gear cluster and the frame of about the width of a business card, 0.5 millimetre. Later models don't have the need to do that. They have a collar on the axle, and you just slide it all the way over to the right hand side. Once we've got it in position, we tighten that firmly. Now before we do anything with the disc itself, we need to come up and refit the caliper, because that'll position it where it needs to go. Okay, we're just about to tighten this up, so just before it becomes tight, I'd like to lift the entire caliper up and give it some clearance. I'm just going to nip these bolts up for now. And then I'll go back with a different Allen key so I can get right in there and tighten them up. Now you'll see at this stage our disc is still floating a little bit. It's actually not, it's just tapped over, so I'm just going to tap it to release it. Now it's much freer, so we can go now and start putting on the wheels, and we do that, put the wheels on first, then we'll come back and tighten this into its final position. Okay, right wheel first. Remember, it's got its little drive cut out, that's got to go in against the frame. It lines up with the new axle. So this one was missing the washer, it's had the tyre off at some stage. So I'm going to put a new washer on there, some 272 Loctite, which is a super strength Loctite. You only need about as much Loctite as you would to put on the top of a match head. So we'll put that in and we'll just put on the first nut. I'll screw that up gently. Now we'll go on the second nut. And the idea is, because this is the drive side, everything is nice and firm. So we'll start by loosely fitting both of those nuts. I'm now using my spanner. I'm going to tighten the inside nut. I'm going to get it nice and firm. Now I'll go to the outside nut and lock that up. So once the Loctite cures, this nut and that nut are locked together, and they're also bound onto the axle shaft by the Loctite itself. Okay, we're now over on the left-hand side, which is the non-drive side, the freewheel side. So we've got our spacer that goes on first. I'm going to fit our wheel. Okay, we don't need any additional washers on the inside for spacing because that looks good. So I'm going to fit the outside washer. And we do exactly the same. We've got our nut first. And we're just going to put on a little bit of Loctite. Going to put some Loctite in the dome nut, which is used to lock everything. Okay, now with this side, it's really quite special in that you need to do it up firmly to start with. That pulls all the bearings and everything together, so don't overdo it, just nip it up a little bit, and I'm going to loosen it until I can feel just the very slightest movement in the wheel. When I rock it, I'll feel bump bump. I just want to go up a little bit tighter until that bump bump when I rock it goes away. Now I've got it on there and it's nice and tight and firm, and we're going to put the outer nut on. Now I'm going to lock these two together with two different spanners, and that's going to lock it in place without overloading the bearings and causing the same damage that we just did. So I'm going to nip them up nice and firm. I'm going to check there's no movement in there. It's right on the edge. I can feel it just. The wheel spins nice and the rest of the axle is not moving. So that's perfect. Now what we need to do to finish this off is to finish adjusting the brake and the disc. Okay, what I'm going to do first is fit the key into the keyway. I'm going to rotate the right hand wheel around until it lines up with the slot in this collar. Then I can rotate everything and turn it around. I'm going to look at the gap between the brake pads here, and I'm going to align the disc so it's in the middle of those brakes. I'm just going to tighten it gently. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. There's a bit of scraping sound and that'll just be fine adjustment, which we'll do in the end. So I tighten that up nice and firm. Getting a tiniest bit of scraping. So we've got some knurled knobs on the side here. So you can use those and move the caliper over. So you can see I've moved it over a little bit. That noise has now gone away. Okay, so the job's finished. So in summary, we've removed the old axle and we've looked at it and decided that it's not serviceable. We've removed the bearings. So this one we've punched out, that one fell out because it was wrecked. This one we punched out, that one fell out, or not fell out, the bearing fell apart. So we needed to put a whole new bearing and get that out. We've put everything back together in the reverse order. So new bearings, which we do the inside ones first, Then using the new axle shaft, we do the outside ones. We position this shaft correctly by coming in from the right-hand side, which on this model is the drive side, going through our gear cluster, through our disc brake, and then we come out this side, we put on both wheels, making sure that we lock the nuts with Loctite, and then finally we come through and we adjust our disc brake position and caliper. And that's it. This is now ready for another 6, 8, 10 years of service, however long they got. I suspect the bearing failure on this was simply that they've had the wheels off at some stage, and they've put this side on, but done it really, really tight. And as I've mentioned several times, that pulls the bearings together and will wreck them. You want to keep this side, so the wheel, if you move it, it's right on the edge of just a little bit of movement, but you want it nipped up just that touch. And that's, yeah, it's actually, I think it was 4 or 6 Newton meters, so you need a good torque wrench that can go down that low to do it, but we just do it so it's firm, and then come off, feel the wobble, tighten it just like 1/10 of a turn, and that's it. Anyway, this is back together now, ready for a test ride. I've got to go over it and do the rest of a mini service on it. I know the wheels are pretty flat on this one. So we'll pump up the tyres, I'll lubricate the chain, we'll go and check everything over, check the front forks, make sure they haven't come loose, and then we'll go on from there. Anyway, thank you for joining me in the bearing replacement of this standard, this one's a 26-inch pedal tricycle from Trike Bike. Thanks for watching.